Greetings, citizens, and welcome to another edition of Flashpoint, a program of issues and ideas. Flashpoint is brought to you by the Lawrence Debate Union, an endowed co-curricular activity at the University of Vermont that trains UVM students in the arts and skills of debating, has them debate competitively and educationally against other sentient beings from around the region, around the nation, and around the world. And some other things that we do to promote discussion, discourse, dialogue, and other things that begin with the letter D is we bring you Flashpoint. And do we ever? This is our 355th program. I remember they said we'd never get to 100. And when we got to 300, I thought, well, we'll never get to 400. Now I think, well, there's no stopping us. Unless there's an asteroid that hits the Earth. And you know, Flashpoint is shown 3 times a week on Burlington's Channel 15, and we really have to thank Vermont Community Access Media for their sponsorship and support of Flashpoint throughout the years. And having been in other communities, you just don't know how lucky you are to have a station like this that's open to people, to guarantee that there's free speech, and we certainly do try to take advantage of it. But you don't just have to watch us on television. You can also watch us on your computer desktop. Go to our website, debate.uvm.edu, and hit that Flashpoint icon or label. It says Flashpoint in big letters, and it will take you right to our website where there are countless numbers of Flashpoint episodes you can watch whenever you please. My name is Alfred C. Snider. I'm the Edwin W. Lawrence Professor of Forensics at the University of Vermont, and I'll be your facilitator for this tension and emergency-packed episode. Let's welcome our panelists, and as usual, our panelists are comprised of current or former members of the Lawrence Debate Union. And one thing is we try not to have experts on the show. Maybe you've noticed that, but we try not to have experts on the show because we believe that normal citizens can gather information, can think about things critically, and can come to some pretty good conclusions on themselves. We don't necessarily need, false qualification talking heads to tell us how to think. Instead, we'd like to give you an idea of some things to think about. Let's welcome our panelists for this week's program. On my far right, physically, if not metaphorically, we have Sam Young, who's coming back to Flashpoint after an absence of 200 programs, and it's still kind of the same. What do you think?
Yeah, it's same as ever, Tuna.
Issues and ideas. And I understand you've been doing a lot of travel, and you have a travel blog. You want to tell us about that?
Well, I just started up my travel blog, blogworldtravel.com. Just took a trip, 2-week trip to Mexico and Belize, and I'm basically on my blog. I'm telling about people about where I go when I'm traveling, the things I've seen, things I like, things I didn't like. You can read about my getting thrown in Mexican jail and having to pay bribes to get out. You enter into a different society and you realize that the rules have all changed, and that all of a sudden that bribery is the way that you get things done. And you don't even have to be doing anything wrong. That can just be the way in which another country produces a revenue stream. Yeah. Even the so-called judge said it was a redistribution of wealth.
Okay, well, at the end of this next week, I'm going to Mexico and then on to Malaysia, so I should send you a post for your blog, if that's
Absolutely.
Okay?
Yeah.
With some photos?
Yep.
Okay,
sure.
I will. Meanwhile, on my immediate right, we have Mr. Stay-at-Home, Sam Ricker. What's the farthest away you've ever been?
Farthest, physically, geographically, would be Washington, D.C.
Okay.
And I've never been on an airplane.
Never been on an airplane. Well, Washington, D.C. is a long way from Vermont, though. I have to say that.
A little too far south for me.
Yep. Now, I know that we're at that time of year of academic challenge. And how's your academic challenge going?
Well, I am sufficiently challenged in every aspect, but particularly math. Math is not my strong suit, and I'll be lucky if I pass that, fingers crossed.
Okay, all right, we'll be rooting for you. All right, on my far left, I have Nicole Colston, who is a debate coach here at the University of Vermont. And Nicole, you just took a big group of students to the University of Rochester. 7, 8 teams, something like that?
Yeah, well,
How was that?
16 of us. It was fun. It was a whirlwind, produced a lot of support to continue debating those. So I thought that was fun and interesting. I like it. It's quite the gang to travel with, the LDU.
Have you ever traveled with a group that big?
Not by myself, no.
No. Yeah. Okay. Well, everybody seemed nobody died. Everybody seemed to have a good time, and so nice work. And next time we'll try to send you with 20 or 24 people. How's
Right.
that? And maybe more support.
As long as we don't blow tires in the van,
Yeah,
I'm good.
that's right. That's right. And then Taylor, I guess this is Taylor Lalemand on my left. She's going to be a super senior next year. Is that true?
I am.
Okay. And you were on that fateful blown-out tire trip to West Point.
I have to commend Nicole. She did an excellent job. It was a trying situation, and we made it through alive. So.
Okay. And of course, there's that Devil's Dirt Bowl racetrack in
Yes.
southern Vermont, which is
Oh.
right where you had the flat tire. And we want to thank them for helping you
Thank you very much.
change the flat tire in the van, because apparently nobody in our van knew how to do that. Always able to talk about the powers of government and negotiations and military policy, but not necessarily to change a tire. But I'm not claiming that I could have changed it either. Okay, here we are. Show number 355. We already said that. Pakistan emergency. It's been all over in the news. And it seems kind of strange because it's kind of a lapse back to the 70s and the 80s, where the U.S. would have, dictators who were their people, who were anti-communist, and who were friendly with the U.S., but not necessarily friendly with their people who they were ruling. And it seems like we're right back there in the situation with Pervez Musharraf, the president / dictator of Pakistan. And he's done a lot of funky stuff, but we seem to like him because he's against terrorism. Boy, will it ever stop. Pakistan has had a pretty rough ride since independence in 1949. They've had a series of, on-again, off-again democracies and dictatorships throughout the 80s and the 90s. There were several different governments. One of the guys who's there now participating, Sharif, and then Benazir Bhutto, who I want you to know is a former debater and was actually quite a good debater, and I saw a wonderful painting of her at the Cambridge Union. But when she was prime minister, there seemed to be a lot of problems. The country didn't seem to be pulling itself out of its rut. It kept rising in the corruption ratings that Transparency International gives. And so in 1999, there was a coup by General Musharraf to take over the government from the elected prime minister at the time named Sharif. And the U.S. didn't like that at all. In fact, they introduced sharp sanctions against Pakistan. And they were very upset by this coup. And then, of course, 9/11 happened and everything changed. All of a sudden, we're interested in fighting terrorism, so it doesn't matter whether you have democracy or not. Now, Musharraf's been in power since 1999. He's had kind of a faux election to elect himself. And I guess that election that made him president with a tad bit more legitimacy didn't seem to be taken very seriously by people.
No, he garnered 55% of a vote with not much opposition, which, if that's any indication of the job that he's actually doing, that certainly speaks to that. But with 55% of the vote, the Supreme Court is now calling into question the legitimacy of the election, and as a result, Musharraf declared a state of emergency in Pakistan and disbanded 60 of the 100 Supreme Court justices.
And that was just this November, right?
Yeah, that was just recently, right? Which is strange, because usually you see students or radicals or whatever protesting. I guess the story was a little different in Pakistan this time.
Right, it was lawyers. The lawyers were protesting outside of the houses where the Supreme Court justices are being held or in on-house arrest. And so I guess the police was there police brutality towards lawyers. I think this is especially damaging if we talk about democracy and what that word means. I mean, the abstract terms of freedom and justice only come into play when we have a constitution, right? We were just talking about this maybe as being the case in Venezuela, but the Constitution being the stronghold. And so here you have people who are invested in the legal system, the lawyers and the judges, doing the protests, which makes it seem even less like a democracy to me, right? The Constitution is the place which guides us.
I was sort of taken by these scenes of the police smashing the lawyers and the judges over the head with their batons, and that was, you know, it's a lot different than, you know, radical students or something, and they apparently they have them under house arrest.
Yep.
Yeah, they said for weeks, actually 3 weeks, one judge was being held without any comfort, any bed, any facilities to use. He was just on a wooden floor. They've been putting up with brutality, as you said earlier. It's really surprising that they're using their resources in this way, just because 40 guards are guarding one person in their house to make sure that they don't come to work today.
That would be effective.
I find it really interesting that, like, so terrorism is the new communism. If you're fighting terrorism, it's okay, but what we say we're over there to do is to promote democracy, yet when it comes to actually, like, you know, there's a real democratic process happening there. We're on the side of dictatorship versus democracy. You know, I guess that's South Asia. We're only promoting democracy in the Middle East. But
Right, the United States should probably take a stand on reinstating the Supreme Court. I think that would be a wise stance. But instead, we continue to hide under our anti-terrorism needs.
Right, and that's just part of the state of emergency. One of the other things in the state of emergency is you couldn't have group meetings, right? And there's press censorship, quite a bit of press censorship. And that's but that's a little more difficult now than it was before, because the nature of the media is changing.
right.
You have the internet, you have small independent TV stations, and so you have to crack down even harder. So Musharraf declares a state of emergency, he gets rid of the justices, he gets reelected, so now he's fine, right? He's in good shape
Well, there's an election coming up.
for Parliament.
For Parliament. He has the ability to lose his power now, as long as the elections aren't rigged. But he stands a lot to lose by, if he loses the election for the Parliament, what he can be.
No, if he wins, right?
But
Well, if he wins, he's okay, and his buddies are involved. But if he loses, one of the first things Parliament's going to do is vote on whether the emergency measures were acceptable. Right? Is it acceptable to suspend the Constitution or not? And the way I heard it is, if he loses that vote, he could be impeached or tried for treason and executed. So he's in a pretty tough spot. But doesn't he have 55% of the public behind him? So isn't he okay?
Well, that's being called into question the legitimacy of the election, and actually was it handled constitutionally. And there aren't many international organizations that are monitoring this, so in the upcoming election, it's hoped that if it does happen, it will be conducted in a
And politically, it would seem as if he doesn't have 55% of the vote, because over 30 oppositional parties in Pakistan have united to form the All Parties Democratic Movement and are taking a stance against not participating in the upcoming Pakistani elections.
And just very basically, if the educated professionals are the ones being beat in the street, I'm pretty sure it's not exactly a willing support for this leader.
And the more you beat the people in the street, the more your popularity declines, would be my Western take on it.
Yeah. Okay. Now, but the U.S. likes him because he fights terrorism, right? Is that really true, or? I mean, does he? I mean, I've heard the State Department say that they're very disappointed that the Musharraf government doesn't take more action against, Islamists in the border areas where former Taliban and everything are organizing and waging a war in Afghanistan from Pakistan, where the the NATO, etc. troops in Afghanistan can't cross over into Pakistan.
If there's one thing to be said for this whole state of emergency, it's pretty effective strategy of evading our pressure that we keep putting on them to fight terror, and they've kind of, we're taking what we can get with them right now, I guess.
Okay, is there anybody else who wants to be the leader of Pakistan besides him?
There's
Cool.
one woman participate, or Bhutto,
Bhutto.
who was a former prime minister. I think you said this earlier, and she's considering participating in the elections, and so she's one of the candidates. Who else?
And then there's Sharif, who was flown back into the country so that he could file to become part of the elections, even though becoming part of the elections may only be to boycott the elections to prove that they were unfair. But he was flown into the country by the Saudis, so it looks like maybe Musharraf has lost the support of the Saudi government, and that they're looking for a political change, and they're very powerful in the region.
Yeah, you're really in trouble when the Saudis don't like you.
Right.
And Sharif was the guy that Musharraf led the coup against initially in 1999. So
Right.
there's no love lost there.
Yeah, right.
I bet. But these two candidates you just mentioned both have sort of sordid pasts. They've both been indicted for uncorruption charges. And of course, they each said it was a setup. I didn't do it. I got set up. But still, they're back. And I understand Bhutto was supported by the Saudis in coming back as well. So, they could be, the Saudis could be setting up Musharraf for a serious downfall. Then the Islamist forces in Pakistan are increasing in strength as well. There's been a new spate of bombings. There was the occupation of the Red Mosque and the attack on the Red Mosque. And so it seems like Musharraf has effectively alienated everyone. The lawyers, the Islamists, the Pakistan People's Party of Bhutto, Sharif's party, and finally, the great cricket player, Imran Khan. Now, cricket's quite a popular thing in Pakistan. It's like the #1 sport. It's really it. And Imran Khan's one of the great cricket players of all time. And he's decided to enter politics, and he's formed his own party, and he says he won't participate in the election. So, Bhutto may, Sharif may, Khan won't, the Islamists won't. All right, if you're trying to expose a bad election, what's the best way to do it? By participating or not participating, or any ideas?
It's a tough call. I mean, I think drawing attention to it before the election is a good place, or international attention to it before the election is a good place to be. If we don't participate, though, what happens afterwards is no change. Right?
I mean, I think you have to be involved in an election process in order to expose any level of corruption. I mean, you say, the guy doesn't maybe, we'll say he doesn't have that much support, but, and then in the election, he got 90% of the votes. Well, maybe there's, that like shows some, fraud with the ballots there. Maybe we should get some exit polling over there. We'll keep Fox News out of it. But
it goes back to the Constitution, I think, and what I was saying about democracy. I think that you have to participate in order for it to be functional. And so even if Musharraf isn't following constitutional practices towards democracy, it's clear that there are lawyers and judges and other political parties who value it as the center of their democratic organization. And so not participating in it makes them maybe not any better than him. Allows him to delegitimize.
And I find that, just all of the stuff that's going on there, at least it's like, political participation. I mean, there is some level of democracy going on there because there's people in the streets protesting every day for one issue or another, and they really want democracy. They really want to be voting for their leaders. I mean, they want to have a say in it, and I think I think the corruption and, you know, if it is a flawed election, I mean, it'll expose itself. But I think that other candidates will need to participate in the election in order to show that you can't just boycott the election because then Musharraf wins. You have to have an election, lose, and then say it was fraudulent, and then have another election with international observers, or, you know, to. But I mean, I don't really have that much of opinion on Pakistan necessarily, because it's really not, I mean, I've never been there. I mean, just the difference of going to a place and then being on the streets and seeing what it's really like makes all the difference in your opinion. I mean, I'm really in no position to judge any of the Arab world or, you know, Islam.
That's
Although they should give property rights to women.
That's interesting that you say we should question where we're coming from with our suggestions. As far as where we're coming from, we're Americans. We used to be a revolutionary nation, and these people are actually taking it to the streets. They are actually questioning the corruption that's going on. And today, in America, the citizens fear the government. They're not willing to go to the streets and protest in the numbers that we're seeing here. So, if anything, it's kind of motivation and a little bit of me not wanting to say too much on this matter, just because I don't think we're any better. We're actually doing a lot
Are
worse.
we willing to get in the streets and get
We're
beat
not,
over the heads
no.
in order to, like, save our political democracy, you know?
Certainly aren't.
Well, hundreds of thousands of people took to the streets right after the Iraq War started, and it didn't seem to make any difference at all.
I was there.
Right? I mean, that's one thing. I mean, all over the world, people did it. Okay, so it's a tough choice for these politicians, because Bhutto, for example, is indicating that she might take part in the election. Then she might be able to cut a deal, and she'll be the prime minister, and Musharraf will be the president, and then she could have a lot of power. And she's a very ambitious woman from my studying her background. Well, she went to Cambridge, so. And but then and then if she participates, don't the other parties have to participate as well? Because, I mean, if you sit out, you're going to be the loser, right?
Yep.
Okay.
I don't know. It's hard for me to get a read on Buddha, not knowing much, as we've all said, or not being there. But I think it's weird that she's going to make this position to run, and I don't know, with suspicions of her past corruption. It seems like her willingness to participate in the elections might suggest that she has maybe some political support and power that she knows that she can execute on the other side.
Well, right after she came back, she had this tremendous procession, right, from the airport through the city. And Musharraf's security people said, don't do that. You're inviting an attack. It's an incredibly dangerous thing. People have sworn to kill. Army officers, high-ranking Army officers have sworn to kill her. They can't stand her, right? So then tens of thousands of people are thronging to her, and there's a huge bomb attack. And like almost 200 people get killed. And the question is, did she do that on purpose to, like, get a lot of news coverage and mobilize her followers? And to say that she would do that, and some observers are saying that, doesn't speak well for her nature. You know, that she's willing to do this kind of stuff. On the other hand, she just went to the border areas, which are very heavily Islamist, and she said, don't give up on democracy, you need to participate. Those people who want violence are wrong, and if you give up and turn violent, you're betraying Pakistan. I just don't know.
Do we have any understanding of what any of these candidates, you know, what they want in their, you know, what are the changes that they want? I mean,
she's got a platform. She's announced a platform. Go.
The 5 E's.
The 5
It's like
E's?
energy, education, environment. It's very vague. I forget what the other E's are.
Equity.
Equity. Right.
Entertainment.
Employment. Yes, equity, equality. Right, so this is her political manifesto.
Right, yeah, but it sounds like when she says she's going to make jobs, she's going to have public works jobs, which is going to cost a lot of money that the state's going to pay for, and I'm not sure that's the answer. But, you know, and it's like, okay, vote for me, I have all these big promises. That just sounds like more of the same of
Yeah,
going
but that's
down a bad
democracy,
track.
right?
Yeah, well,
It goes back to
She's
participating,
spinning
though.
off from
But
our-
I mean, politics will always have opposition. Politics
Mm-hmm.
will always have power plays. Politics will always have people who are underserved, who are trying to be seen. And
Politicians will always lie.
Right, will always lie. And so, I mean, not participating to me doesn't seem to be the answer. But
and I'm also really concerned about her because she looks exactly the same as she did 12 years ago when she left the country.
so
You know, she has not changed at all. I'm worried she's some kind of robot or something. That she's,
Maybe it's
you
just
know,
Botox.
she's got better plastic surgery than most Hollywood stars. If you look at these pictures, and they always show, it's really interesting, the media always shows her picture. Because she's photogenic woman, right? But, and like Sharif, you barely ever see a picture of him. And Imran Khan, he's a handsome athletic star. But so the Western media, I think she's done a really good job of appealing to the Western media as I'm the answer to Musharraf's stuff. But I'm not necessarily sure that's true. So if you were, what your advice, I guess our advice seems to be, okay, whatever, participate, right? Get involved, right? Because I think if people don't get involved and the Islamists, you know, benefit from this, then Pakistan's going to be an even worse place. If it all of a sudden is Sharia law, and then, you know, and there are a lot of women who have made advances in Pakistani society, and that's not going to be true if the Islamists take power.
Very true.
Let me ask you this. Very controversial that Pakistan has nuclear weapons. Okay? Are you worried at all about who's got their finger on the button amidst all this?
I'd say it is something to be concerned about because, you know, our choices of who's in power aren't very good. I mean, we have President Musharraf now who came in a violent dictatorship and has, you know, since then he was the general, he was the leader of the military until he renounced that position. But the question of is anyone else who comes in going to do any better? You know, I'd say they won't.
Well, what about the transition? I mean, what if there's a transition? Could Musharraf say, I'm not handing power over to the winner of the election because I've got nuclear weapons and you guys better be nice or else? I mean, you know, do nuclear weapons make a difference?
They make a difference, but I mean, it's just like another one of those things in a way that it's like, well, we can't really worry about it. We can't really spend our time worrying about their nuclear weapons because it's not going to do any good. They're going to use them or they're not, and
It's all
well,
hypothetical, really.
But they've got it. Okay, we're out of time now, and I just want to ask you a simple question. 2 years from now, do you think the situation in Pakistan is going to be more stable, the same, or worse? And we'll start, and of course, it's just a guess, right? We don't know. But anytime you look at the future, like, where, you know, am I going for a picnic today or whatever, you have to guess about things. So we'll start from you. Great to have you back, Sam Young.
I think that with the high level of political participation, it is good. Things will be better in the long run because of that. There's obviously a lot of issues to work out, corruption, how you implement democracy and voting. It's good. Go.
All right, no time left for editorializing. Better or worse?
Worse, given the current state of things.
Okay, Nicole.
better. Everything's always going to get better.
Okay, way to go. Taylor.
Better because people are taking the initiative to protest.
Okay, I think it's going to be exactly the same. Pakistan seems to be on a treadmill to nowhere. Thanks a lot for watching this week's edition of Flashpoint. Don't forget, think for yourself!